It's maddening. There's junior hires everywhere.
And yes, Katie, we are fine. But now everybody knows where we're going.
Let's go.
And welcome back to another episode of the SuperPodcast. We are joined in with the incomparable Nate Schaffner, the recent graduate.
You're putting me on a high pedestal there.
Hey.
I don't know about incomparable.
I mean, who can we compare you to? Is I think the point we're trying to get at.
Well, I mean, there's only one. There really is only one.
There really is only one of you.
Thank God.
And I'm glad to have you in. 100%.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's going to be nice not talking about movies for once. It's nice to talk about something else.
Yeah. And,
So
this episode, we are going to be talking the NFL, going into the draft. Just finished the combine a few days ago, and there's pro days going on. Really, I think we can just go right into this. You're a Bengals fan. I'm a Browns fan. So we can really just go right out and say misery season is in full bloom, I think.
Yeah. It's what is this, like season 7 or 8 in a row of mediocrity?
Maybe for the Bengals, or is that overall? So if we're going to talk Browns.
For the entire division except for, Pittsburgh and Boston.
Yeah, basically.
It's like, yay for mediocrity, woohoo!
Yeah, the Bengals is playoffs maybe, and then forget about winning.
Yeah, right.
And then the Browns can't win, period.
8-8, yay!
The Browns are like, we won a game, and then, no, we didn't.
No, you didn't.
Not this year, and ironically...
You had it for a minute, and then no.
Well, I didn't go to any games this year. I think that was part of the problem. I went to a game, and they won.
That is the problem. You need to start going to more games.
I need season 2, and I think this year might be worth it. Just with even within free agency, the players that the Browns have picked up, like even just with Tyrod Taylor, which, you don't think of Tyrod Taylor as being a Tom Brady elite quarterback, but at the same point, he brings in another level of excitement, ability, that he's an above average quarterback that can make a difference, and he's a Cleveland type of quarterback, I think.
Yeah, and I've always said that Cleveland is one good QB away from being a playoff contender, and I've always believed that.
Yeah,
and hopefully, this will start the upswing for the Browns. We'll see, though. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think signing a couple key players like Carlos Hyde, bringing him at running back to replace Isaiah Crowell. They got, who was it, from one of the linemen from Pittsburgh. So we got basically to replace Joe Thomas.
Yeah.
And Joe just retired, so it's like.
Yeah,
I think the Browns knew about that too when they signed. So, let's see. We'll look at the offseason moves for both teams. Looking at draft prospects going into this, the Bengals, they've got the 21st pick, but who are they? I don't know, from your perspective, I don't know who you are looking at in terms of who the Bengals are going to draft, but on the draft boards, on the draft mock drafts, it doesn't look like anybody has a general consensus because you're 20 picks down the lane. It's like...
Yeah. I don't really know any specifics or any names, but I think that they need to find a leader on that team.
Yeah.
Because there's no captain. There's no one guiding the ship. And if you don't have a captain of the ship, then it's going to sink, and it's going to sink hard and fast. So I don't know. Again, I'm trying not to sound like a complete dummy here, but it's I don't know who they've got their eyes on, but they need to figure out how to meld on the field, and they need to do it quickly. And you can see it on the field too.
Yeah,
You can see
like even with like in the past couple of years, and it's really noticeable with like games against the Steelers, which as a Browns fan, it doesn't really make sense to me where the Bengals and Steelers have this like just vicious. It's not even rivalry; they just aim to kill each other. It seems like.
It's interesting because I am the Bengals fan that has lived in Pittsburgh for the past couple of years, and it's funny because here in Cincinnati, we think the Bengals-Pittsburgh rivalry is like the Yankees and the Red Sox. But up in Pittsburgh, they could care less about us.
Yeah, it's like the Bengals almost are treated as the ugly sister, but of the AFC North, because we're just like, I mean, you're here, but
their big rival is Baltimore and New England.
Yeah,
they could care less about Cincinnati.
Yeah, and even Baltimore is just the baby because with the whole movement of the divisions back in 2002, that really threw in.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, hey, Baltimore, you're in. So it's like really the oldest rivalry in the division is Cleveland and Pittsburgh. No matter how lopsided it is, but it's kind of like Ohio State and Michigan, where it's like the Browns dominated early, and now it's Pittsburgh that has been dominating lately.
Yeah.
But looking at the Bengals, what they're gonna, at least from the mock drafts, and you can probably attest this a little bit watching them more than I do, but they've got on 2 of the 3 mock drafts that I have here on NFL.com, they have guards picked. And
good.
Considering you were saying like how there's not much of a leader there, I don't know if it's just Andy Dalton. He's just like, you guys aren't helping me. It's like is he like using his offensive line as a scapegoat, or like how is he? Like, what's the deal with him?
I honestly don't know, because there's games where he's really good, and then there are games where he's overthrowing constantly, and I honestly don't know what to make of him. And still, I mean, how long has he been with that team?
Yeah, and he's had a couple good years, but as of the last couple, it seems like you went 6-9-1 or 6-10, and then go 8-8. It's like, well, you improved 2 games, but like, and
honestly, he's had more bad games than good.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Yeah.
And do you think that could be an offensive line problem?
I think it's both an offensive line problem and a QB problem. Because on one hand, he can overthrow sometimes.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, the offensive line is just not where they need to be. I'm not seeing any melding on the field. They're not meshing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's any fluidity.
Both. Yeah, fluidity. That's a great word. I mean, there's no fluidity.
Yeah, so like what they're looking at, they've got Will Hernandez at guard on their radar, also as well as offensive guard Connor Williams. One's from Texas, El Paso, and then Williams is from Texas. They've also got Hayden Hurst, tight end from South Carolina, on the mock draft.
Those are all above average players.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, anything right now that can make that team better. Because they got a new offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a step in the right direction. It's a small step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But and now they're starting to get above average players. So whatever can make that team better in any way at this point.
Yeah.
Because I'm starting to be ashamed to wear Bengals gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
Well, I mean, have you been a Browns fan?
Well,
because you want to know what one of my 2 jerseys is that they're hanging up? His name is also known as Johnny Football. Because I was on that bandwagon.
Here's the thing, though. Cleveland fans are the most optimistic group of people.
We are. we believe it's like, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the vibe. We already think that we're going to get into the playoffs the next year or two. But
Yeah,
I mean,
see,
that's also possibly
like
that's also John Dorsey's effect.
You guys are already planning to be in the playoffs, whereas we're already planning to have our games blacked out because nobody fills the stadium. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're looking at we're two different fan bases, but at the same point, we both experience the same lackluster of like execution on the field, in the draft, and it's like,
yeah.
So basically,
same level of disappointment.
Yeah, same level of disappointment. So we know the Bengals. It sounds like they need more. Do you think it's more offensive stuff that they need, or do you think they're lacking on defense, or do you think there's a overlap, or do you think it's just kind of even?
I think the defense is better than it has been. I think there's still room for improvement. I think it's mostly the offensive line.
Which is why these two of the three mock drafts have them picking an offensive, like a guard, and then a tight end.
Which makes sense.
Tight end.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah. So what do you think they don't need if they're going to work on offense? Do you think they don't need defense, or do you think it's just like, why do you even bother? Because now that they lost A.J. McCarron,
yeah,
who do you have?
I mean, really, the question is, and we've talked about this before. The question is, what don't they need? It's what do they need? I think. I mean, who do they got for wide receivers? I mean, it's.
Well, you got AJ Green.
Yeah.
You got Telfer. Or Eifert.
I think they could. I think they could do with some more defensive. I mean, it's decent. Yeah. It's not to the point where, like with the offense, I'm yelling at the screen. You know, with
so
defense,
definitely they need offense.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, their defense doesn't ever look
I think
terrible.
They could use more offensive players.
Yeah, it sounds like they need more offense.
Yeah,
and that's definitely the Browns' case too, because like even with quarterbacks, and I think we could go on forever about quarterbacks, about just like I've told you this before. If they would have listened to me when they draft in April, the Browns would be in the playoffs 100%. Because like even before, like if Johnny Manziel didn't go on drugs, he would still be watchable. I think he'd still be playing. Like he was exciting to watch, no matter how good or bad he was. Mm-hmm. He was exciting to watch. Every game was watchable, no matter how bad. Well, until I had to buzz my head because I was a little too optimistic for his first start.
And don't you?
And I will never forget it. I won't forget it. But like really, the last decent quarterback, I don't even want to say decent. I want to say actually a good quarterback they've had was in 2007, Derek Anderson. He was the last good quarterback we had consistently.
Honestly,
and Brian Hoyer, I mean, like he was just injury prone.
How many quarterbacks have the Browns gone through in the past?
Since they came back,
5 years.
So, well, in the past 5 years, it's been probably 6 or 7 at least. But even starting quarterbacks, since they've come back in '99, they've had 22, I think. Which it sounds shameful, but it's like they just
why? Like
it's
they're not even giving them a chance.
Yeah, that's what at least what I always say, when my family always says is, if you have constant turnover, you're not going to have any consistency, and consistency is what you build on. And that's why also coaches, you can't turn over a coach in 2 years. That's why I said we have to keep Hugh Jackson for at least this year and give him an offensive coordinator, because look at the last 2 years. When you don't have an offensive coordinator, what do you get? 1 win in 32 tries. And Todd Haley coming from Pittsburgh, and I was like, he's coming from Pittsburgh. I don't know how I feel about that, but at the same point, I was like, Pittsburgh offense was good.
Yeah,
so
it was.
I'm like, maybe this will help. And then John Dorsey is like, he's just like a genius doctor of GMs. Just like takes Kansas City from 2-14 to the playoffs next year, like a 9-game swing. I mean, I was like, I can see the Browns. I said this: the Browns can go at minimum, I think at worst, 6 wins. Like that's it on a bad side. because like because they've got an offensive coordinator now. I'm like literally like half of last year was me yelling at Hugh to call the right play and he wouldn't. It's like when the Seahawks called a pass play and didn't run Marshawn Lynch to win the Super Bowl a couple years ago. That's how I felt with Hugh, except it was the other way around. I'm like, pass the freaking ball. I don't care if Kaiser's going to overthrow it by a mile. Throw it. Don't run the ball on 3rd and 4. Crow's not going to get through the line. But
you're absolutely right. You're never going to you're never going to progress as a team if you don't if you don't give them a chance.
Yeah.
It's like one and done. It's like
that's
why?
That's how it's been with the quarterbacks. It's been one and done because they're just like, oh, well, you didn't win a lot of games. Let's draft the next guy, and then they instantly throw him in by the end of the year. Like, whoever they draft this year, I don't want them starting this year. Tyrod Taylor's good enough that if he wins 6 or 7 or 8 games, we're cool. He's starting next year.
Yeah.
But, like, we don't need to be, like, because their whole thing has been pick a quarterback. It's like, oh, he doesn't win enough games. Okay, we'll move on. It's like, you ever think it's possibly the coach's fault? Because Deshaun Kaiser's going to be great.
Well, I mean,
and I said this last year. I was like, he's going to be great. He just needs time to build. And they decided, like, you know what? Let's not give him a chance. Let's trade him to Green Bay where he sits behind now one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game with Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, you're sitting behind one of the 5 best quarterbacks ever, and he's going to be sitting there for a while. So by the time he comes in a few years and Aaron Rodgers retires, watch out for Kaiser. But he didn't have an offensive coordinator. Yeah. He was just too overwhelmed, I think, with coaching the entire team and can't call plays on offense and do
it was a lot of stuff that was on his shoulders.
Yeah, there was so much that it was like there were 16 games and 16 new ways to lose a football game. When you're up 21-7 on Brett Hundley and the Packers, you should win. There's no excuse. And then they when they scored the touchdown to go down 7, and the Packers did, and they scored and were down 7. I knew instantly. I was like, "That's not this drive. This isn't good." And it was the 3rd quarter. I was like, "This isn't good," because the defense just let up. But the defense is not bad. The offense has to get some headway. The quarterbacks have to stay, and I think that's the biggest thing the Browns need is get their franchise quarterback here, which I know who they should pick.
Don't worry about the defense.
Yeah, at all. The defense can be improved, and they've already done that with they got Demarius Randall from the Packers, and then they got they just got a guy today that from Seattle, where Seattle actually tried to trade for him, and then the NFL nullified the NFL nullified the trade. They said no. You're staying with Cleveland. The NFL is trying to keep Cleveland. Keep your players. I swear you guys are gonna be fine. It's like, keep him and you'll be good.
Oh Lord. Well, that's just like in the off season, because I listen to the local sports station in Pittsburgh, and all I would hear on the radio is that fans, think that Tomlin should be fired. Well, fire Tomlin because they didn't make it to the Super Bowl, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, Tomlin ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Tomlin ain't going anywhere unless he wants to. Why? Because he wins.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's set the bar so high. Like he's been the 3rd only one of 3 Pittsburgh coaches, I think, in the last 50 years or something like that.
Since the 1970s.
Yeah. In 40 years, they've had 3 coaches.
Yeah.
So that sets the bar pretty high. And he's won a Super Bowl, hasn't he? Or
yeah. Yes, he did it with Cowher's team, but he has. Yes.
Yeah, that's
now,
right.
You could make the argument that he can't win the big games, and did he make a couple questionable 4th and down calls in the playoffs? Sure.
But what else are you gonna do? Like those are the play. Like he's making daring calls, and I think that's what Pittsburgh fans don't like. Is they're like, man, you're making a call that's throwing the game. It's like, well, what else are you gonna do? You're losing. How else are you gonna win? Punt the ball away? You don't win by giving the ball up, whether it's willingly or unintentionally by a turnover.
He ain't going anywhere. And it's just, it was kind of silly listening to it because. It was just they were going to the playoffs. They were 10-6, and yet it seemed like the city, like nobody cared. I'm like, you guys are in the playoffs. Do you know how many teams wish they could go to the playoffs?
Yeah, it's like if they don't get if the Browns are 9-7, we're screaming to get in the playoffs. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and when we went 10-6 in 2007. And we got knocked out because of a tiebreaker, because Peyton Manning couldn't win with the Colts, and then because it deferred to the Titans, and because the Titans beat someone else that we beat, and it was like a second cousin type deal. It's like we got knocked out at 10-6. It's like the Browns are 10-6; they're not going to the playoffs. Like,
well,
if we were playing, that stadium would be sold out. There'd probably be 50,000 people standing outside the stadium. It's like Cleveland would be shut down.
Well. Yeah, and back in 2005 when the Bengals played the Steelers in the playoffs and Palmer got knocked out, and the Bengals have been mediocre ever since. And it was just looking back on it now, it's like that's as close as we've gotten.
Yeah.
Because I've learned to hate two teams over the past 7 years: the Steelers and the Jets. God, I hate the Jets so much because there was that year where we played them twice in the regular season, and then we played them in the playoffs, and we lost again. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm done.
I'm tired of losing to them.
I'm tired of losing to them. But that was a really big deal in 2005, of course. But it was like that's as close as we've gotten. But it's
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and I think. Pittsburgh really, they don't have much to improve on, and we can talk about them draft-wise here. There's really not much for them to improve on, except it looks like 2 out of 3 agree on what's this guy's last name? I can't even say it.
They're good all over, man.
Yeah, it's okay. His name is Leighton Vander Esch. That's the inside linebacker that they agree on, which, I mean, I can see that being a thing to get, basically to back up Ryan Shazier until he comes back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Justin Reed at safety, I'm like, that's...
Yeah, it's just having backups.
Yeah,
I understand that, but there's
deep.
There's really nothing that they need, like you said, that they need to improve upon.
Yeah, it's just being consistent, and then honestly, I would think about looking towards a backup QB at some point, like a good one, because in a couple of years, look what Ben's going to do. Ben's talking retirement, and if he's thinking it, that's automatically like, even if it doesn't, if he says it's not going to affect his play in the regular season, it's going to affect his play because you're thinking.
Who's their second string now? Well, anyway, he got knocked. Roethlisberger got injured.
Wasn't it like Jarvis Landry? No,
yeah.
Yeah.
Or Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown's the receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. So it must have been Landry. But anyway, so Jarvis. So
it's Landry Jones. What I was talking. Yeah.
Landry Jones. Anyway, but that's the thing. They have Landry Jones, but they ain't gonna make the playoffs with him.
Yeah, because, I mean, look at their Week 17 games against Cleveland the last 2 years. Overtime, the Browns in 2016, the Browns almost beat them. And then last year, at least really since 2016, as long as the Browns have been this bad, they've almost beat Pittsburgh, which I think Pittsburgh's got to look at something on their end where it's like, how are you – like, I think defensively maybe is what the Pittsburgh Steelers should look at, because if the Browns – as bad as they are almost beating them with one of the worst offenses in the league.
Here's the thing, and we could talk about Roethlisberger until we're blue in the face. But here's the thing: is that the thing with Roethlisberger is that whenever he gets injured, he's supposed to be out, a certain number of weeks. He comes back early. He plays like crap, and then he gets injured again. And
like, did you ever think
remember,
about keeping the guy out and letting him heal?
Yeah, because, well, here's the thing. I think it was last season where they were on their way to the playoffs, so they were looking pretty good, and then Roethlisberger got injured, and they brought in Landry Jones, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, depending on how long Landry Jones is going to be QB, they may not make it to the playoffs. And if Ben hadn't come back early, they would not have made it.
Yeah,
you know, and they would not have made it to the playoffs if they didn't win the division. They weren't going to the playoffs, and it was as simple as that. But Landry Jones is not there yet.
Yeah, and he's been in the league 6 years, I think, is what I saw.
But how much playing time has he had?
And he's played, how many games? Like maybe less than 10.
Yeah,
it's got to be less.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think even with Ben's injury time, like he's just not there. So I think Pittsburgh at some point, and they could do that in the later rounds this year in the draft. They could get a quarterback. Like there's quarterbacks that are expected to go undrafted. And I don't want to say JT Barrett's going to go to Pittsburgh, but JT Barrett is one of those guys that they have him mocked so low that he's not going to be drafted. Yeah. They could pick up some gem in the 7th round like New England did. He ends up being the next Tom Brady. Like, we don't know.
I mean, yeah. But, I mean, I think going back to what they need, their defense, honestly, their defense is solid. Yeah. I mean, they experience,
almost everywhere.
Yeah, almost everywhere. You're absolutely right. But I think there are some pockets that aren't necessarily consistently bad. Yeah. But I think it goes back to having a backup just in case.
Yeah, and it's like their outside linebackers or defensive ends to replace James Harrison, who left and then went to New England. That would be one. That's one case where they need to look at. And of course, with Ryan Shazier, that's probably why they're looking at inside linebacker, because they need someone to be the second or third string to rotate in and out.
And I think that's it. I mean, other than that, they're good.
Yeah. If we look at, if we transition over to the Browns, I think there's, back to the Browns, I should say, there's way too much that they need. But in a free agency and offseason, they've made so many leaps and bounds, I think, just in the free agency and trades that I'm like, they look like a completely different team. And
yeah,
because they've picked up. But like I was hoping they would get Terrell Pryor back, but he ended up going to I think he went to an AFC East team. He might have went to the Jets. I think he went to the Jets. But the Browns pick up Jarvis Landry from Miami in a trade. I was like, when I saw that, I was excited. Then they go out and trade for they trade Kaiser to Green Bay to get Demarius Randall. I was like, and the weird thing about that, they were like those 3 trades, because there was that and then Tyrod Taylor. All 3 of those happened within like an hour and a half. And I'm driving home from work and also going to my high school to film a boys' playoff game of basketball. And I'm trying to look at this stuff. I'm like, well, okay, we got Landry. It's like, okay, cool. Now I was like, I'm still trying to read that. When I have time to read that, I see that we traded for Randall. I was like, what's going on? We got another trade. And I'm like, it's like, what happened? I'm like searching through Twitter, constantly refreshing, looking at Facebook, looking at Instagram, everything. And I was like, holy crap, we just traded Kaiser. We don't have a starting quarterback. I look, literally 15 minutes later, Browns trade for Tyrod Taylor. I was like, oh my gosh.
Things are looking up.
I was like, John Dorsey ain't holding back right now. I'm like, he's all in.
And we could probably take all night to talk about Cleveland. I've often said that, what happens in Cleveland goes all over the internet. And it's like, for so long, they've been like the high school football team that's in the NFL.
Yeah.
And...
Or like a mediocre college team where it's just like, guys, just... like a little, it's like, 1, tackle the dude, or 3, just run. Like, go.
But you're absolutely right. He's not holding back. And I honestly think, how long until you get tired of being the laughingstock of the NFL?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be insulting.
No, I believe it, because it's like gotten to the point, like even the past couple, like you get to this point where it's like you're mad that someone sucks, then you get used to it, and then you go to the denial stage, then you go to the acceptance stage when you realize you're like, yeah, we do suck, and it's like people can make fun of the Browns, and like you can tell just from me, I'm like, okay, like tell me something I don't know.
Right. And it's
and the funny thing is, if you look at it, the Jets are actually just as bad, if not worse, because they've consistently been mediocre or bad.
God.
And they've gone through just about as many quarterbacks. Their front office is terrible. So I was like, the Browns, like, although they've been bad because they're just the Browns, they've had the team change, I think, when they moved. I think that's what kind of propelled everybody to be like, hey, you guys came back and you still suck, huh? Like,
yeah, and, it takes a true fan to admit when your team stinks.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why we're always optimistic, because 0 wins. I thought 1-15 was bad, but that one win was probably the greatest football game I've ever been to. And it always will be. The miracle on Christmas Eve was amazing.
Well, I think where your optimism is,
it can only go up.
See, here's the thing with me, is that with me it's like, yeah, okay, it can only go up, but at the same time, every season I'm turning on the TV and be like, all right, let's see what can go wrong this season. Yep. Because it's like, for the past 8 years, we've had half the team.
The Bengals,
the Bengals have, half the team has done time.
And that's one thing you were saying before when we were planning this out. That's one thing about the Bengals, like when you were saying that the problems with picking players, whether it's drafting or trading or free agency, is that they have a hard time finding a player that isn't dirty or in jail. And that's literally like a joke, at least from Cleveland. Like our one of our only jokes that we can make is just like, all right, welcome to the Bengals. Who's going to get arrested next?
Right, but at the same time, we were still playing 8-8 footballs. That's the funny part.
It's like, somebody new got arrested this week, and we're still winning. Like, how is this possible?
Right, but you're absolutely right. When it comes to the kind of players that the Bengals need, we need good, clean players who have that fire and passion on them, that they want to win, and. Speaking of heart and fire and passion, I don't know why Marvin Lewis is still coaching the Bengals. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that's what I feel about Tomlin. Is I'm like, they're just kind of like, whether it's like Tomlin and is just kind of like, I don't feel like he's like a legitimate authority coach. Is more like, it seems like he's a cheerleader type of thing, where it's like, hey, go out, do this, like you got this, and then Marvin Lewis literally sits back. And it seems like Marvin Lewis doesn't say anything. Like, he
doesn't care. You can see
he doesn't seem like a coach that will instill fear into you.
Do you know what I would give to have Marvin Lewis start behaving like Rex Ryan? Do you know
I think anybody would love to see that, just for pure entertainment purposes. Like, what would happen if he actually showed some emotion and showed some fire?
That's what I mean. It's like, I would. That would just be such a delightful thing to see. But, it's when you talk about the players that we need, players that are, players that want to be there, that haven't been to jail, and we need good, clean players. Anton Burfict should never be allowed on the football field, ever.
Yeah, and that's why I don't like Vontaze Burfict, because it's like he literally, like, you can tell out there he plays dirty. It seems like he.
Did I say Anton Burfict? I meant Vontaze.
Antoine.
Vontaze Burfict. But here's the thing: am I the only one? Was it this past season where the Bengals played Pittsburgh and Burfict got knocked out? Like, it was a dirty hit.
The same game that I think it was the second game, the same game where no, Shazier was the earlier game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
that was the first Steelers game. Yeah,
but he got knocked out by the Steelers played, and it was a dirty hit, like right up.
And I think it was the December game, because there were like 2 or 3 plays in succession, almost or drives, I should say, that's like he got knocked out. There was another guy that had an injury. I was like, these guys are out, and my parents were actually in bed because we were at a hotel just in Illinois on the way to go get Jared from his boot camp graduation, and I was watching the game. I was like, oh, the Bengals and Steelers are playing. And literally, I turned it on because I was like, this has to be good. Like not in a good way. Yeah, and he got flattened.
Right,
I was like,
the chin. Yeah, I'm sitting in the chair when that happened. I stood up and applauded. I was like, that's what you get. That's exactly what you deserve for being the kind of player that you are.
And Antonio Brown was the other player that I was thinking of, that he got blasted in the end zone when he caught the ball. And I was like,
that was.
And I saw that from some of my friends on Twitter that are Bengals fans, where they're like almost like applauding Burfict being hurt, and you don't want that as a fan. But at the same point, that's just it really declares what his personality is.
Yeah, and it's as you're absolutely right when it comes to, as a fan, you don't want to see that, but at the same time, karma's a what.
Yeah.
And it's you had it coming. You had it coming.
He did, and I'm like, I don't know. Like I pray for guys like that where it's like,
how is he still employed? I don't get it at all.
But that literally just explains and then perfectly wraps up the Bengals. Him, Pac-Man Jones, John Ross, where it's like you get guys that are like, can you act like a man, just a mature man for 2 minutes?
Yeah.
And then show that for 60 minutes on the field.
Play football.
Yeah, you can play aggressive football, but don't try and kill people. Your helmet is not a weapon; it's to protect you from accidental.
Don't do nothing.
Yeah,
it's just. I always go back to this. It's like it's not what they need. It's not what they don't need. It's what they need. And they need good players. They need a coach that exhibits friggin' emotion.
Yeah.
On that field.
What they need is what they don't have. And I think that's where you need a coach that needs a little bit more fire. You need players that need more fire, that aren't going to just lose their control.
I hesitate to say it, but I would almost want Bill Cowher to come out of retirement to coach the Bengals.
I like him as a human. And if he coached the Bengals,
he would whip them into shape, brother. I'm telling you what.
Oh, yeah.
There'd be no messing around anymore. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, and I think that's
because I think that's the other problem too, is that Marvin Lewis lets them get away with this kind of stuff.
And Tomlin does that too, which is, I think that's why you see these games getting, in the last 2-3 years, almost getting out of hand. With the playoff game, it's like, are you guys aren't respecting each other. You're not respecting the game. When the fans are booing your own team, something's wrong.
Yeah, but at the same time, I've seen Tomlin get mad, and I'm frightened. And I've never seen Marvin Lewis get mad. Yeah. Get mad, get angry, jeez.
Yeah, get fired up about something, whether it's dumb or not.
Right.
So, I think the Bengals and Steelers, it sounds like the drafting wise, they don't have to worry about too much. The Browns definitely do. And I think
it's
they're trying to look for a franchise quarterback. That's what we got to get, and it's going to be a couple years before he really feeds in. But that's got to be the main focus, and I think I know who they're going to get at number one.
I mean, it sounds cliche to say, but it's a laundry list of problems.
Yeah.
But I think it starts with the quarterback.
Yeah, and they fixed some of it in the offseason already, drafting, or not just drafting, but trading and signing for good players. When you have Landry, you've got Taylor, you got Carlos Hyde. I was like, that Carlos Hyde wouldn't be my pick at running back, but at the same point, I think he's an upgrade from Crowell, and he's a ground and pound guy, and that's why he was good in Ohio State, and that's why he was pretty decent in San Francisco. It's because if he has a good line, he's kind of like an Eddie George type of guy. When you have a good offensive line, he's going to run. And that's really any running back, not a quarterback, running back. And Duke can do that, but he's more of a hybrid back. He'll go outside. Duke Johnson can almost play as a slot receiver almost. He can catch the ball. Yeah. That's a nice thing. And I think the Browns want more of that, which is why there's so much talk about them getting Saquon Barkley, But I don't think Saquon, though he's probably one of the best players in the draft, you don't get a running back number one.
No, you don't.
When your primary problem is the dude that hikes the ball to hand it to him or fake that handoff better than what Kaiser did or anybody else did.
Dude, I'm telling you, there's nothing more embarrassing than a botched hike. Yeah. Wow.
Well, I mean, you can't beat Mark Sanchez's butt fumble. Like, that's probably the most hilarious thing. Every time I watch that, I'm like, how did you do this?
How? How is that possible?
But luckily, the Browns haven't had a
You had
fumble.
one job.
Well, what I love, and that's saying that with loads of sarcasm, is is Kaiser last year, where it's like he would run around, and it's like, oh, here comes a defender behind him, walk on his arm, boom, there goes the ball rolling away, and scoop, and off he goes to the other end zone. and with who I want them to draft, and I've said this a couple times, I'll actually basically this is my pick. The Browns need to pick Sam Darnold, but his issue in college was running around one hand on the ball. Like, he's running around basically like pointing at the guy, and the ball's just out here on one hand by his way. So he's had fumble problems. But I've seen him improve because I saw him at his pro day on Wednesday. When he did some of those drills where he'd run around, he had two hands on the ball, and he actually
you gotta tuck that in. You
have to secure the ball, and that's the only thing I really think he needs to improve on, because his decision making is good, his accuracy, that can be improved with the mechanics there. But and I saw him when he played Ohio State, because I was like almost praying for the Buckeyes to play someone in the bowl games. I was like, pick one of these teams that the Browns are going to draft a quarterback from. Yeah, luckily they drew USC.
I've been a huge Ohio State fan, and I felt the same way.
Yeah, and you watched that game. Mm-hmm. And like, I could tell, like, when I watched it, and maybe you can kind of see this from what I'm going to say here, is he looked like, and in a good sense, he looked like a Cleveland Browns quarterback. He looked like a guy that could play for Cleveland, has that hard nose. Like, his personality wise is like, he deserves and belongs in Cleveland, I think.
He's young, he's hungry, and I think he wants to do well.
Yeah, and my second choice would actually be Josh Allen, which he just looks like a young pocket passer. I think it looks like he's going to go to the Jets, or let's see, where else is he down the board here. Either the Jets. Two of these mock drafts actually have him going to the Bills, which I can see that. Yeah, I can see that, but I almost think he would be like that pocket passer that goes to the New York Jets.
Yeah,
because he's got he's got a Cardale Jones type arm, where it's like he flicks his wrist, the ball is flying 2 miles, and you may never see it land again. But like, he's got that type of ability to run around if he needs to and pass it. Josh Allen is not my first pick, but he's like my second quarterback pick.
Yeah, I got you.
And then Baker Mayfield, where I was like, there's so many people, like, if you like you look at like Cleveland social media, it's so bipolar. Yeah, it's so bipolar who people think Baker Mayfield is, because people are like, oh, he's another Johnny Manziel, because he's kind of got that cockiness to him.
Yeah, but you can't compare anybody.
And you can't compare to because I'm like, Johnny had so many off-field issues. I'm like, if he didn't have off-field issues, he was literally the next Russell Wilson, because he had that ability to run around. Literally, he could be running the opposite end zone, turn around, do like a 180, just throw the ball 40 yards down the other way to, like, what was it? I think he did a couple, like, he'll run bootleg the opposite direction that you're supposed to as a right-handed quarterback, throw it almost backwards across his body, like away from his body, to like Travis Benjamin coming across the field and touchdown. Like, Johnny was a fantastic athlete, but when you're doing drugs and alcohol on your off the field stuff. Yeah, and I just wish he didn't, because I was kind of, and I want to see him come back, but I'm kind of to the point now where I'm like, I don't want to see you back in Cleveland, because we've moved on.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, it'd be interesting to see how their offense does this season.
Yeah,
If they,
I think it's going to improve. It's just their offensive line maybe is what actually has me. I won't want to say worried, but just even slightly concerned because now that Joe Thomas is gone.
Yeah,
I think bringing in and I keep blanking on his name, left tackle from Pittsburgh, bringing him in, I think that's going to help a little bit because Todd Haley's going to know what to call to use him, at least utilize him specifically, and he's going to know the whole playbook by preseason anyways. But Tyrod Taylor can also run around too and escape if need be. The Browns' offensive line hasn't been ridiculously terrible, but they've been pretty decent for the most part.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I mean, again, we could joke about this all the time. It's like you can rewatch Browns offensive plays, like rewind and try to figure out exactly what went wrong and where.
And you can't pinpoint it to one thing either because almost every play it's like cringing to watch because you're like, guys, like it's like you would think this blocking scheme would make sense. These receivers would get open. It's like, but Corey Coleman is just like lacking.
It's starting to get like I'm tired of seeing that.
Yeah, like I want to see the Browns, and I think it's going to be very soon. That I want to see the Browns become the Browns of old. Like they came, like when they were formed in '48, instantly were amazing. I'm like, I don't know how you did it. So I'm like, it's probably the coaches. But like, there were so many good players too that they just picked up. The Browns were a team you didn't mess with in the 40s and 50s. There's a reason why they have 9 championships.
Yeah, it's like, and honestly, even as a Bengals fan, do you know how happy I would be for you if the Browns made even like a 500 season? Like if the Browns went 8-8, I would
if
be.
If we
like,
went 7-9, the place would go crazy.
7-9, even that would be like.
The Browns
crap.
are. Well, my thing is like the Browns won more than 4 or 5 games. This is amazing. Like, holy crap, we're back. And then it's like we're still sub 500, but we're back. It's like somebody get the car. We're going to Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like we're going out drinking tonight.
We're gonna go party. and I think a lot of that is they're one quarterback, and like you said, they're one quarterback away. Because like if you have a good quarterback, it almost eliminates most of your problems. And like case in point would be Tom Brady, because if you take him out, what are the Patriots' offense without Tom Brady anymore? Because Garoppolo's not there.
And here's the thing: do you think about, because you mentioned earlier about Roethlisberger? He's on his way out.
Yeah, he's on his last leg.
And so is Brady. Think about when they retire. How much that's going to
change the face of the league.
It's going to change the face of the AFC, of the league. Like, that's going to open up. It's almost like in baseball when you get tired of seeing the Yankees win the World Series. It's just like when somebody else gets there, you're just like, yay!
It's like, well, yeah, it's like when the Cubs won the World Series and beat my Indians. One, I was so upset, but at the same point, I was like, I would not rather lose to anybody other than the Cubs. Like that was actually, I was like, I'm okay that we lost to the Cubs, but at the same point, we blew 3 games.
It's just like my heart was with Ohio, but at the same time, I'm not gonna boo a team who just won their first World Series in 108
years. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's like they took that long.
I am not at all going to rain on their parade. You know what I mean? It's just
I know. I was like, you know what? Let the Cubs fans come out of hiding. It's fine. I'm like, the Indians are going to get back to the World Series again.
And then you hear 9 months later how many babies were born 9 months after the World Series.
Oh yeah, that's every city that wins a championship. I was like, do the Patriots fans ever get tired of it? Like, is there ever a thing where they're just like, all right, time for more kids? Like, are you serious? Like,
just like, if
come on, Boston.
If non-Patriots fans get tired of it, how tired are they?
Yeah, it's
just like
Oh my god!
But it's like when
they almost have a championship every year in some sport. Like they've got 4 sports. It's like someone's almost winning every year.
I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
But when Roethlisberger retires, when Brady retires, when Belichick retires,
I mean, even if you narrow it down to Ben, like watch that change the face of the AFC North alone. Like you're gonna go from the Steelers dominating to the Browns are probably going to be in contention and fighting for playoffs every year. The Bengals are still sitting there. And then the Ravens, it's literally every other year that they're good. And I don't know why that's the thing, but it's like, oh, there goes.
And it really shouldn't be a thing either, because ever since
they're consistently up and down.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we won 9 games and now we won 5. Now we won 10. Now we're winning 7. Like, hey, we won 9 games again. Now we won 4. Like,
it's weird because for a few years after Ray Lewis retired, their defense was bad.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, like you said, now it's better, but it's inconsistent. Yeah.
But I think consistency, the Bengals, it's going to be hard to see it until I almost think it's a coaching change. That's what I almost think has to be.
You have to start there.
Like I almost think they're not the Browns or the Jets in terms of record-wise where like they're just that bad. But I think they almost need a front office adjustment. They need to make some position changes and coaching.
The front office has literally said we are not in this to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because like you look at it,
then
free agency they don't do anything. The free agency they're literally sitting there. It's like, oh look, the Bengals. What did they do? Well, there's a big old goose egg, and I think they've even let some players go. Like they're not doing anything.
He was a bad egg.
If he was a bad egg, he was a bad egg. He was a bad egg. Like, did you pull anybody in? Do you look to improve? Before you know it, they're going to have 20 players entirely on the team that are playing offense, defense, and special teams.
Marvin Lewis has a losing record as a coach.
Does he?
I think so. I'm fairly certain. Why is he still employed? Like, I do not get that at all.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, well, let's see. What is his overall coaching record? Wins, losses. Okay, I think total as the head coach of the Bengals, he is 125 and 112. In 15 years, he is only 13 games above 500. That's a 527 win percentage. Like you're barely breaking even.
That's bad. That's awful.
Okay, well you can also throw in 3 ties, but like also
a tie is a loss. Are you kidding me? Like that's not cool. Like how are you?
You go 10 minutes in overtime and can't score more than 3 points.
Seriously?
And they've tied twice in the last 4 years.
What's even crazier is that tie may be the tipping point about whether you make the playoffs. Yeah. And I cannot even emphasize enough how much a tie.
It's because it's a half win and a half loss. Like literally algorithm wise, and I did this in Excel last year. I had to do it 4 times. It's a win and a loss, so you're getting both, but it's not helping you.
I just throw my hands up in the air every time it happens.
Like, what am I supposed to do?
You can't score 3 points.
And even if you do, like, stop the other team from getting in field goal range. If you kick a field goal, stop them. That's all you got to do.
I just, oh, God. But they need front office changes. They need head coaching changes.
Yeah.
And then start with finding a leader on that team.
Yeah. Because I think Andy Dalton's like he's a leader, but he's not one that they're going to be like, okay, we're going to rally behind him. Right. And we're going to basically make sure that he is our guy. We're going to protect him at all costs. We're going to basically
I'm not saying they need to go out and find another Tom Brady or another Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
But they need to find somebody who's going to okay, man, like, what do we do?
Yeah, and do you think that's like a 3 or 4 year thing where it's like within 3 or 4 years the Bengals might have a new quarterback?
I would say 4 or 5.
So,
unfortunately.
Yeah, so because I can see it, because like Andy Dalton, let's see, like when was he drafted? You remember that? 'Cause he wasn't a first round pick.
Yeah.
But even that, it's like,
and
he's been in the league for what, probably 8 years, I would think, 7-8 years, something like that. So like
7 years.
In a few years, they're gonna be like, well, if you're not performing, here's the door.
But here's the thing, he hasn't been performing.
Yeah, he's only had like 3 good years, maybe.
Yeah.
And that was it's been a few years.
Maybe they'll show him the door and he'll go to another team and he'll be great.
Yeah, so that could be. It's like, because that's what happens with the Browns all the time. Is like, oh hey, look, Deion Lewis wins a Super Bowl with the Patriots and couldn't do squat. Taylor Gabriel goes last year. Alex Mack as well. Like, the Browns won the Super Bowl last year. Their name was the Atlanta Falcons, but they won the Super Bowl because there were so many players on that team. I'm like, oh my gosh, like the Browns turnover, I think, was part of the problem. But the Browns have to keep players. The Bengals got to get players that they can keep that are not going to basically just throw themselves into a trash can or throw themselves in jail.
That aren't going to, pardon the expression, but that aren't going to dick around.
Yeah, basically.
Just play football.
Yeah. And I think that's why, in regards to the draft and the Browns, I think Sam Darnold's going to do that. And that's why after his pro day, I'm like, I love this man. Please draft him, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Because, and I thought of this earlier today. I was like, I think I figured out that they are going to draft him, because when the Browns announced like a day or two ago, like the numbers of, like the jersey numbers of players that they brought in, 5 was already taken for Tyrod Taylor. So I was like, okay, well, what's he going to do? I was like, he can only take 7. I didn't think that Zane Gonzalez, our kicker, who was already number 5, was going to change to number 2. So Tyrod Taylor has number 5. And then Landry Jones takes 80, who Ricardo Lewis already had. So Ricardo Lewis changed to 15. And Jarvis Landry, who was 14 with the Dolphins, was 80 here. I was like, okay, what number do we still have open? 14. Who's wearing 14 right now and probably is going to keep it when he comes to the NFL? Sam Darnold. And what number is open on the Browns? Number 14. I was like, we have to draft Sam Darnold. This is a conspiracy. It's got to happen.
And it would make sense, because, like you said, they're not holding anything back this year.
Yeah,
in terms of trades and everything.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to trade out of these first 4 picks. Like, you go out and get Sam Darnold. Like, do not waste your first pick on a running back. There are plenty of them in this draft that are good. And like a lot of them, like there's Saquon Barkley up like on the best running backs. Like, he's number 1. Everybody else is kind of like 2, 3, and it seems like everybody's tied, because everybody's like, you pick one, you're not going to lose anything because it's a running back.
Right. They're all solid.
Yeah, they're all solid. And everybody, at least the teams that are up top right now, it's like the Browns, Jets, and the Giants. They all need quarterbacks. And that's why there's a very high likelihood. And like 2 of these 3 mock drafts have the quarterbacks going in 2 of the first 3 picks. One of them has all 3 of the first 3 picks going quarterbacks, with Darnold, Rosen, and then Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield are kind of mixed in there with the Jets. But I would like Baker Mayfield just because he's got that intensity, but he's a small guy. I mean, he's ripped to no end, but
I may be about to start sounding like a dated idiot here, but is Tom Coughlin still head of the Giants?
He's down in Jacksonville now. He started head coaching last. That's why the Jacksonville Jaguars were in the playoffs, because he is a good coach.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like, if it seems like every time his job was on the line, they did well. You know what I mean?
But that doesn't happen in Cincinnati, does it?
No. You know what? It should.
And it doesn't in Cleveland either. But Cleveland, they just have missing pieces, and I think a lot of that I think this draft could fix a lot of those.
I think Cleveland has more to gain than Cincinnati. And quite honestly, I think Cleveland has more to lose, too.
Well, yeah, at this point, we've got a lot to lose because you get these high-end players. It's like you should win. And I think they're going to do that now. Because I've said they're going to win Super Bowl 58, but I was like, now I think they might win one before that, too.
If Cleveland won the Super Bowl...
No, I don't think anybody would hear the end of it. It'd be like the Browns finally won a Super Bowl, not just an NFL championship, which they already have 9 of. It's like they actually won a Lombardi trophy.
It would be the equivalent of the Cubs winning the World Series.
Yeah, because like Chicago is a Cubs town, but Cleveland is always. And as much as I love the Indians, and the Cavs have their history, but the Cavs have not been great throughout their entire history. The Indians have had their very storied history, but they will always, even since the Browns came into existence, there were like the 40 years of the Indians, and then the Browns came in. Cleveland's always going to be a Browns town. They're a football town because Northeast Ohio is football. That's why the Hall of Fame is in Canton.
Yeah,
the
Browns, I've been to the Hall of Fame, and it's amazing.
It's nice, and even with the update, it looks amazing. Yeah, but it's the Browns winning the Super Bowl. I don't think. Like that would change my life.
Man.
When they last won their championship, my mother was 2 years old. Like this isn't just a generational thing. This is a multi-generational thing. Like there's multiple generations of Browns fans that have yet to see consistent winning and a Super Bowl. We've always been that close and never gone.
But which is worse, that or suffering through the 90s with the Bengals? Like, come on now. Like, that was awful. That was just horrendous.
I don't know. I think these last 10 years of the Browns have probably been some of the worst in football history.
Well,
there's different. It's different when you get to the playoffs and get teased with the playoffs and then can't win a playoff game like the Bengals can't. And then there's the level of you're averaging 5 wins a season in 10 years. Like there's a different story to be had there.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Browns are, and like I've almost signed up to be a quarterback. I'm like, where can I sign up? Because I know I literally am skinnier than Johnny, and I think I would be just as good, if not better. Like I can make a good decision, and I don't do drugs or drink alcohol on a regular basis.
Put me in as a tight end.
I feel like you would be more of a fullback.
Are you calling me fat now? Is that what you're doing?
Are fullbacks fat? No. But if you want me to call you fat, then yes, I will. But that means it's just because you gave me permission.
Yeah, put me in there.
Yeah, I think it would be good. All right, so Sam Darnold, I think, going number 1. Josh Rosen looks like he might go to the Giants. I don't like him as much because he just seems like a rich kid that just doesn't care. It sounds like he had like no one's liked him. Just it's like these coaches think he's just not tuned into football. Like it's like I don't know. He's not. He wouldn't be my pick.
Yeah, I mean he does kind of have that born of privilege feel to him.
He's literally a doctor's boy. He's literally a doctor's child. And like if that doesn't, and there's nothing against doctors' kids. Like they have a good life, but the way Josh Rosen plays and carries himself, it's like, oh, I deserve to be here whether or not I want to be here. And he's like, I'll try. I deserve. Like, I don't think even since he was a freshman at UCLA, I don't think he was he never lived up to the hype. At least to my eye test, I didn't think he was that good. I'm just like, he just looks like your average college quarterback that can pass the ball.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
So, but the Jets are undecided between Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, and Josh Allen, which is why they traded up. So they're going to get a quarterback, that's for sure, because, I mean, when you have the greatest quarterback Band-Aid of all time with Josh McCown, Like, hey, I'm going to be mediocre everywhere I go. Like Cleveland, Jets, the Buccaneers, literally like 10 teams, I think. Literally. The journeyman of the NFL. But the Browns, I think, either draft Saquon Barkley at 4 or you go out and get Minka Fitzpatrick at defensive back. They need a defensive back since Joe Hayden left.
I kind of like to see that if they got Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. Well, I think having another cornerback, because we had a couple of guys the last few years. We drafted hold on. I've got it right here. Justin Gilbert. That name doesn't ring in my head because I forget about him. But as a first-round pick that flubbed, like that's a first-round bust if I ever saw one.
Yeah. And I think Fitzpatrick could fit in very well.
Yeah, he's probably like the best defensive player in the draft.
And
the Browns need that, especially with Greg Williams. He's gonna thrive. And I like that pick, but at the same point, like drafting a running back, like you have 2 or 3 on every team. I think having Saquon Barkley just to have him would be good. And I think that would be like, all right, get rid of everybody else. It's not him, Hyde, or Johnson. Like, get rid of everybody. Right. But Minka Fitzpatrick, I think, would be an ideal defensive pick if they wanted to do that early. But at the same point, there's so much that could happen. I don't think Fitzpatrick's going to slip. So then once we hit the second round, anything goes. Like you never know. At that point, I'm just like, all right, who are we going to pick? Who are you? Can you pronounce your name for me because I can't read that.
Where was he from? What team did he come from?
It's like Montana, Wyoming State College. Like those states are next to each other. How is this a college that overlaps the state border? Like, what's your? Do you have to pay out of state if you have to travel across the campus? I don't know. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. It was a lot of, I think it was less draft, but more of like figuring out what is wrong. And I think we've really
between our two teams, there's a lot.
Oh yeah,
and there's a lot that needs to be fixed. But judging by what's happening with the draft, it looks like they're starting to make improvements.
Yeah, the Browns definitely are. The Bengals, I think it's bigger problems that more than just players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think just front office, Marvin Lewis. I honestly can't wait until Marvin Lewis is done.
Yeah, and the Browns, when they changed their front office, that made a world of a difference before any of these moves happened. Yeah, player-wise, really I was like, they feel like – I'm like, all right, we're making some headway. We're going to win 3 or 4 games. You get some players now. I was like, oh, now we're going to win 6 or 7. We could win more if we get a couple more guys in the draft. So it'll be interesting, and I think we may have another talk during the draft. Maybe we could do one during or after. As a reaction, we can do another one.
Yeah, I'd love to do one after.
Yeah, that would be a good reaction. It's like
because it's either going to be holy crap or it's going to be holy crap.
Yeah.
Like,
which version are we going to get?
Which version is it?
That'll be amazing. Well, Nate, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, no problem. I hope it didn't sound like too much of a idiot.
Oh, don't we all? You're a Bengals fan and I'm a Browns fan. There's really not much that we can. Is there any level of intelligence that we can get out of this? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
If our teams listen to us, they'd be in the Super Bowl every year. That's 100%.
See, good stuff happens when people listen to us.
It's the Bryce is right, and you're a director, so it's like if people listen to you, things will go well. This is why I work with you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, now, blah, blah. Words after an hour already. Thank you, Nate, and I will. Hopefully, we'll have you back on. But in the meantime, Thanks again.
Sure. Absolutely.
Oh, you have a blog, don't you? Do you still do that on a regular basis?
I do have a blog. I haven't done it. I haven't gotten to it in a while because I've had this little thing called an education, and because I recently graduated. But I'm going to get back to it. You can find it on Blogger on Google. It's called Movie Crunches. I basically pick a movie every week, and I discuss various points about it. I'll be getting back to it fairly soon, now that I have a little more free time on my hands.
Definitely a good read, and if you go and check those out, definitely some good reads. And for movies, if you've seen them or haven't seen them, take Nate's perspective on it, and maybe another perspective on the movie that you might not have had.
You know, and it's great too because a lot of the movies I discuss are movies that I'm watching for the first time.
Yeah, so you're getting a fresh take on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if people have seen it before, it's like it could be another view.
It's a new way to look at it.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that, and congrats again on your graduation, because I will be there when you walk again.
Thank you very much, sir.
It's a big day for you. It's gonna be coming up soon. So
it will be 4 years, man.
Yep, it's 4 years of hard work. Pays off.
Hopefully, no one will ruin it for me this time.
I don't think so. I think you're gonna be fine. Thanks again, Nate, and for everybody else, thank you for listening. I will see you all in the next video and in the next podcast. Thank you for watching. Bye.